Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down how two major wars, happening thousands of miles apart, are creating this incredible 1-2 punch to the entire global economy.
So, let's dive right in. How does this actually work? Well, the answer really shows you just how connected our world is and how it's being shaken to its core by this pretty unprecedented dual conflict.
Okay, the key to understanding all of this is knowing that these two conflicts are not hitting the economy in the same way at all. You've got one that's a sudden, sharp shock, and the other is more of a long, grinding drag.
Right, so this slide really frames our entire story. You've got the Iran conflict, which is that acute shock, and then the Ukraine war, which is the chronic drag. A good way to think about it is like this. One is a sudden injury causing immediate sharp pain, while the other is like a long-term illness that just slowly weakens the whole system. Let's see how that actually plays out.
So, first up, let's talk about the most impacted sector, energy. This is where that acute shock is being felt the most intensely, without a doubt.
And the flashpoint for the Iran conflict's economic impact, it's all about this waterway. Seriously, you should think of it as a global energy artery. It's incredibly narrow. And any disruption here immediately sends these massive tremors through the entire energy market.
And here's the scale of the problem. A full fifth of the world's seaborne oil and a huge chunk of its natural gas has to squeeze through there. So with tanker traffic basically grinding to a halt because of threats and insurance companies pulling out, the markets are, they're in an absolute state of panic. And what does that panic look like? It looks like an immediate price spike. We've already seen an 8 to 10% jump, and some analysts are warning prices could shoot way up towards $100 a barrel if this keeps going. This is what you're going to feel directly at the gas pump.
Meanwhile, you've got the chronic drag of the Ukraine war still reshaping the energy world. Sure, sanctions and attacks have cut into Russia's revenues, but the bigger, more profound effect has been this permanent shift as Europe scrambles to get off Russian gas and the whole world speeds up its move to renewables.
So this dual impact, it creates some very clear winners and losers. While U.S. shale producers and the big energy giants like Exxon are benefiting from these high prices, it's the airlines facing insane fuel costs, and really, consumers everywhere who end up paying the price.
Okay, so the next domino to fall is shipping. That acute shock in the Strait of Hormuz has triggered this whole cascade of delays and costs across the entire global logistics network. And we're not just talking about oil. We're talking containers, aluminum, even fertilizer. A 2 to 4 week detour around Africa means, everything gets slower and a whole lot more expensive.
But now, let's look at an industry where both of these conflicts are having the exact same effect. And that effect? A massive, honestly unprecedented boom.
So in both of these war zones, munitions are being used up at a rate we haven't seen in decades. This is just draining Western stockpiles of everything from basic artillery shells to super sophisticated air defense missiles. And the response? Production lines that have been quiet for years are roaring back to life. That's leading not just to soaring profits for contractors, but it's also forcing governments everywhere to dramatically jack up their defense budgets.
Now, when it comes to agriculture, that chronic drag from the Ukraine war is still the main story. You have to remember, this region was the breadbasket for a huge part of the world, making up nearly a third of key exports like wheat and sunflower oil. 5 years into the conflict, you've still got mined ports, damaged infrastructure, and grain shipments being used as weapons. It's not a short-term spike, it's this persistent pressure that keeps global food prices stubbornly high, and it's hitting developing nations the absolute hardest.
So, what happens when you combine that sudden, acute shock with the long, chronic drag? Well, you get a really powerful and unpredictable ripple effect that spreads across the entire globe.
What all this creates is a serious risk of something called stagflation. That's when you get higher inflation and slower economic growth happening at the exact same time. It's not good. Financial markets are rattled, supply chains are in pain all over again, and regions like Asia and Europe are getting hit particularly hard by this perfect storm.
So let's bring this all home. Because the effects of these conflicts, they aren't just abstract headlines, right? They actually translate into real, tangible costs in your daily life.
At the end of the day, the bottom line is pretty clear. From the gas pump to the supermarket to the price of your next plane ticket, the economic fallout of these twin wars is directly hitting household budgets. See higher energy and shipping costs? They eventually find their way into the price of almost everything you buy. And all of this leaves us with a final and pretty sobering question. As we try to navigate this new era of sustained, overlapping crises, where a sudden shock can just land right on top of a long-term problem, you really have to wonder,
Is this state of constant volatility just the new normal? Is this something we all have to learn to live with?